Welcome, Wargamers, to the savage dominions of the mortal realms, because today we're talking about, wait for it, Dominion. For those of you who are new to Age of Sigmar, or kind of the factions that are represented in the set, whenever a new edition of the game drops, Games Workshop releases a 2-player box set, and these are really meant to be setting the tone for what the next couple of years are going to be like. Like last time we had Soul Wars, which was Stormcast versus Nighthaunt, and again that was kind of the meta-narrative for a bit. Well, included in these box sets is a little lore booklet, meant to introduce you to the various armies that are in the box, and kind of set up a little backstory as to why these two forces would be fighting at all. Now, oftentimes, as been the case the last few editions between Age of Sigmar and 40k, a full-length novel will drop at the same time. And at this time, if you go ahead and GW sites and pre-order it, you can buy the book Dominion, based on the game set called Dominion. And I do plan on doing a 2+ Tough book club with Dominion, which is still in pre-order at the moment. I'll have a future video for that announcement and how to join and that kind of stuff. But I've already gotten many requests from folks asking about the lore inside the boxed game set itself. And so I wanted to cover this little tidbit. Who are these factions, what's the story, and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's a fair bit going on. It kind of jumps you straight into a story. I think they were kind of assuming you had already read Dominion, maybe, like the novel version. But our story begins with Andrasta, the celestial spear and huntress of Sigmar. Now, we're going to cover the full lore of all the units for these various armies once their battle tomes drop. But to make it brief, she is essentially a solo hero, just kind of sent out on her own to hunt and track the most dangerous beasts in the mortal realms. Things that really pose a threat to the burgeoning cities that are trying to grow. This could be monsters that infest places where they need water. It could be stomping, rampaging beasts that are burrowing through farmland, all that kind of stuff. And right now she is kind of stationed over in Gur, which is going to get some weird reports in from the local settlements. There's this weird pattern, they lay it out pretty well, that there's a couple of cities on this string of settlements that have gone dark. They're no longer reporting in, they're no longer sending or receiving messengers, that kind of stuff. And most people are like, well, whatever, there's probably just some kind of interference with their communication, maybe the roads closed, that kind of stuff. But Andrasta feels like something's not quite right. She understands that the patient and silent hunter is just as dangerous, if not more so, than the loud, aggressive, in-your-face one. However, she does not have the authority to investigate it. She is there for a job, and so she basically asks a good friend, a man named Tiberian Vorst, who is the Lord Imperatant, and basically asks him, hey, can you go check on these things? This is your area. And so as a Lord Imperatant, he has the authority to just send patrols out, kind of investigate stuff at his own whim. And there's a cool little sub-story here. We learn that the two of them, Andrasta and Tiberian Vorst, who is a Hammers of Sigmar, Lord Imperatant, knew each other in their mortal lives. They had a little bit of a story where they were basically working together as warriors of their tribe, trying to make sure all of their people got through the gate to get to Azir, and ultimately were killed in the process of defending those folks and were taken up by Sigmar there. Which is an incredibly cool backstory, and that's why I can't wait to read the novel Dominion. However, back to this story, the first leg of the investigation into these weird town, silences brought them to a place called Crockett Creek, or Crorhawk. I'm not really sure how to pronounce this. But this is like a little small mining community. It's all built around a series of mines bringing out different resources. And when our heroes landed, they expected to find the place either perfectly fine, the roads are just closed, everything's good, we're good, or utterly and completely destroyed and pillaged, right? I mean, that's kind of like the yes or no here of pass-fail of settlements here in the Age of Sigmar. Or at the very minimum, maybe the town was taken over and now it's been fortified. The enemy wanted the mines. But the problem is, none of that happened. It was just empty. There was just nobody there at all. The earth beneath them was very strange. It was very thick and boggy, like this muck that made it very hard to walk in. And they looked over and there's a dam nearby that had totally burst, and there's houses kind of sunken in a bit. Like, okay, well, something obviously happened with water. We don't really know what. Some of them thought that it was the Deepkin, but then the Lord Imperitant's looking around. It's like, it doesn't seem like their way of attacking. Right? It may have a lot of the same clues as far as things just kind of being soaked or wet, and it seems like water rushed through here, even though technically it didn't, like the Ether Sea. But none of this was quick and clean and decisive like the Deepkin would have been. It looks like a hot mess rolled through this town. So they leave a small garrison force to just remain there to make sure everything's okay, and then the rest of the Stormcast party moves to the next town in line that went dark, a place called Salzagor's Hope, which is sort of like a little riverside township that was developing a reputation as a trading hub. And this is where our heroes get their first clues as to what is actually happening. These tiny little goblin grots were picking through the aftermath of some kind of disaster here. All the inhabitants of the city were dead, and the remnants of a greenskin army, these little dudes, were taking trinkets and weapons, picking through the dead like vultures. One of these little grots was captured and interrogated by the Knight Arcanum, which sounds absolutely like no fun. She uses her witch sight and can see inside his brain, and basically she catches the trail of a weird arcane poison in the wind. Like there's something foul in the air. And so they just follow the foul thing in the air, whatever it is, and it leads to a place called the Amberstone Watch, which is actually the name of the little booklet story thing. At this point, the camera kind of shifts and our perspective of the heroes that we're following moves over to that of the newest army to scour the mortal realms, the Cruel Boys. A sub-faction or subspecies of orcs that have really evolved in two very distinct ways. One, they are utterly dedicated to Mork, which is the cunning side of Gorka Morka, of cunning but brutal. So they use all manner of tricks and poisons and ranged weapons and all those kinds of things that may at first seem un-orky, but it's just because they're fighting smart. And remember, they are still orcs, so they will just at some point drop the bow and just go run and punch stuff in the face. They are still that same aggressive, they like melee, it's just they're trying to do better. But the second thing that makes them unique is that they are and have really adapted to their preferred environment, which is that of the swamps and bogs. A lot of times when orcs are described, their tribes are big open plains and spaces or something like that. These guys, they love the dense, cramped, dark swamp. They've learned its magics. They can summon water and muck from the earth, calling upon fog and suffocating fumes, and turn any place that they are in into this nasty, dank, boggy swamp. Now I'm going to go more into Cruel Boys once their book drops, because this little lore thing it's cool, it's a great hook, but it's very limited in scope, so I'm going to not go too far into their uber deep backstory, but that being said, they have an awesome plan that this little narrative booklet sets up. So they know Cracknose has been freed, unleashed upon the realms once more, and he is quite mad. If you don't know who that is, go check out my Broken Realms Cracknose video. I think you'll enjoy it. But when the entry on them kind of started off with talking about Cracknose, I was like, oh, okay. So they're going to do all these attacks to get Cracknose's attention or favor or something. And I was totally wrong. That is not the idea at all. Okay, so here is their plan. Make a huge batch of super poison, go to a place of great, geomantic power, where the ley lines meet in all the right places. You dump the poison deep into the earth. The earth spot being here is the continent of Thondia, which is a prominent place in Gur that we're kind of focusing on right now in AOS. And you have to remember, everything in Gur is kind of alive. Every single thing from mountains, trees, rivers, clouds, even continents. It's all alive and constantly fighting for survival in the ultimate food chain. So the real point behind poisoning the entire landscape is to get the ground itself to shake, to recoil, and lash out. You're poisoning the creature that is the continent you're standing on. And the principal goal here is to make it shake so violently that it destroys this little area known as Daunts, which just so happens to be the ancient homeland of Cracknose, the god that they're mentioning. And the goal here is hopefully to pit him into such a rage that his warpath, his look for conquest, will never end. So backing it up a bit with what we know about Cracknose from the Broken Realm series, essentially they want to manipulate a god of destruction into a forever war with everyone, thereby ensuring him as one, a constant ally and a banner to be rallied behind, but that only works if he never finds out that, his people following him were the ones who orchestrated the destruction of his own home. And in their minds, their grandiose plan is to somehow jumpstart a new age where destruction armies are on the warpath once again. Now united by Cracknose, now that he's had the proper motivation. And there's a ton to unpack there, and I love it. And so that is their goal, and they're at the Amberstone Watch because it's the nearest location to where their swamp was located, where ley lines meet. And it turns out the other two towns that they passed along the way were really just to test and refine this arcane poison that they made. Now, while the fort, the Amberstone Watch, was very well defended, it didn't stand a whole lot of a chance going against the Cruel Boys' Waw, because you now have Hobgrots hurling bombs over the walls, greenskins running headlong with spears, you have choking miasma because the fog is rolling in from the shamans. So it's pretty easy to see this is a recipe for disaster. They don't go into a lot of details about the forces who are stationed there, but it seems like they crumpled pretty quick. And so the boxed game, set really kicks off when our Stormcast heroes arrive. They interrupt the brewing of these huge vats of this poison, and the big battle commences. And honestly, there's a few little details about characters making dramatic entrances, but that's about it, because remember, this is to set up the lore for the game that you're going to play. So you have to determine the fate of Amberstone Keep, and I'll give you a hint, points tend to nudge in favor of the Stormcast. So the story in this box doesn't actually have a firm conclusion, though I assume it will in the novel Dominion that's coming out soon. But that being said, there's still some interesting tidbits that I pulled from this. Let's just be honest, this is the Cruel Boys show, right? The Stormcast in this box are super cool, but I'm going to be honest, no lore about them specifically makes them stand out as super different than what we've seen before. They're Stormcast, something is weird, they investigate it, they follow a trail, they squash the problem, and that story's been played out before. We meet Andrasta, who is cool, but again, lore in these sets is very limited. So I can't wait for a fuller description, maybe some achievement she's accomplished or something like that. But right now the stars of this box are the Cruel Boys. Because right off the bat, they set themselves apart from other orcs to me. They seem like a very unique thing. And that is orcs that are and fight tricksy instead of head-on. And the way that I see it, their unique, weapon, their advantage that they have, that every army seems in their own books to have some secret weapon as to why they're the best. I feel like what makes the Cruel Boys sound dangerous, at least in the context of this small story bit, is they have a large scope and scale for destruction. See, like Gordrak, the leader of the Ironjaws, he's the Fist of Gork. He wants to destroy everything in the realms, but he wants to do so with a military campaign, right? A war that he basically still has to go from place to place and fight everything. The Cruel Boys in this story have a much bigger vision, making a continent recoil, so hopefully you can trigger colossal earthquakes everywhere and destroy the guy you're trying to get, eventually your banner behind, his home. And of course, within that plan, the grander one, there are smaller battles. I mean, there's still an army, they still have to go fight and stuff like that. It just seems to me that they have a different view of a larger scale and how they accomplish things, as opposed to just walking your army place to place and punching them all individually. These were people who preyed upon the nature of the realm of beasts and preyed upon Cracknose's grief. And that's all in the ultimate effort of preying upon the forces of order, death, and chaos. And to this end, I like that Cracknose is being, first of all, used in the stories as a point of motivation. But he's also being used in the sense that he's not Gorka Morka, right? He doesn't have this unbridled, unhinged power. He can be manipulated. He's just exceptionally powerful in a realm of might makes right, so others flock to him. But he can be used as a pawn. He isn't abstract and deific in the Cruel Boy's eyes like, Morka might be. Instead, he's a chess piece, which almost makes Cracknose's fate seem sadder. Then again, if you get his backstory, he kind of asked for it. I don't really know how to feel about that one, but it's rough. Now, we've seen in Ghiran, the Realm of Life, how terrible the poisoning of a realm can be, and basically those toxins and stuff came from Nurgle. But also, toxins and poisons are the main weapon of the Cruel Boys. If they poison a river, it could have, of course, deadly impacts on all the life for miles. Never mind directly into the heart of a realm. So I feel like, at least the starting beats of this next chapter, they're really important and they're epic because I like the idea of Cracknose being manipulated and, having to fight against basically nature as things are getting poisoned and stuff. But it's not apocalyptic, right? Like, it's not the same thing as Soul Wars where there was this big sweeping event. I think that would be kind of exhausting to follow. I like where it's at, where this is the real tension when it comes to growing your cities and growing the forces of order, is like these little fires everywhere and making sure they don't steamroll, like, for example, getting Cracknose ticked all over again and going on an even heavier rampage. Gotta shut down that snowball effect so things stay chill. So I'm excited to hear more. Stay tuned for more lore for all of this stuff when the battle tomes drop and the novel Dominion drops. And I'll have more information about that book club very, very soon. So tell me your thoughts on the Amberstone Watch, and I will see you in the comments. Happy wargaming.